y'all, and welcome back to another episode of There's Danger Here. I'm Leilani,
And I'm Sam.
and today we're going to jump right into it.
Okay, let's jump in.
The justice system is reactive, not proactive. As such, laws are typically put into place after events occur.
That's true, for sure.
So we're going to talk about a case that definitely affects.
Some of our legal system.
You'll know as soon as I say the name.
I can't wait. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. I hope everyone else is too.
Ernesto Miranda
Okay.
was born in 1941 in Phoenix, Arizona. Knowing poverty, being raised by an alcoholic and abusive father, eventually he was pulled from the home and pushed into the system, into foster care. In 1954, he was arrested for burglary, receiving probation. In 1955, he was arrested again for second-degree burglary, for which he was sent to reform school in Arizona State Industrial School for Boys at Fort Grant. Moving into juvenile detention in 1956 at 15 for petty theft and assault with attempt to commit rape.
Oh no.
So not a great person to start.
No.
In 1957, he was arrested again in Los Angeles, California for robbery, going back to juvie. But just 45 days in, he turned 18 and was released.
Oh my gosh.
Ernesto returned to Arizona and enlisted in the U.S. Army. After basic training, he was sent to Fort Campbell, Kentucky. Just 8 months after enlisting, however, he was arrested for voyeurism and sent to the stockade.
What is voyeurism?
Like showing yourself to people and stuff like
flashing?
that. Yeah, sort of, and
exposing yourself?
Yes.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
From what I understand.
I've never heard that word before.
After this, he went AWOL, which is absent without leave, multiple times. For this, he was sentenced to 6 months of hard labor and submitted to psychiatric counseling, then dishonorably discharged. Which now it's a lot harder to get dishonorably discharged. They'll go with other than honorable, but not dishonorably, usually, which is weird. From Kentucky, Ernesto moved to Texas and was arrested for vagrancy. They were like, you're homeless. We don't want you.
Yeah.
Like, you're under arrest.
It's time to get you out of here.
Then moved to Tennessee, getting arrested for driving a stolen car.
Holy moly.
And he was charged for violating a federal law known as the Dyer Act when he drove the stolen car across state lines.
Oh. That sort of increases the punishment there a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He was sentenced to 366 days in federal prison.
That's it?
The first 6 months he spent in Chillicothe, Ohio, which offshoot that was the death row for a while. They just got moved again. But and the remaining time in Lompoc, Texas. He got out of prison in 1961, meeting a woman named Twyla Hoffman, who was recently separated.
Oh no, poor Twyla.
Twyla was 29 with 2 children under 10, and after meeting the family, moved to Mesa, Arizona. In 1962, Twyla was pregnant, and in late summer, they had a second daughter. She had a second, his first. To pay for everything, Ernest got a job loading docks at a produce company in Phoenix at night, while Twyla worked days at a nursery school.
Wow, she's like almost changed this man so far. I know. Don't look at me like that.
Yeah, that's the end of the story.
Uh-huh.
I have no idea. Quit it. In November of 1962, Ernesto was prowling in Phoenix, Arizona.
Okay, she didn't change him for long.
On the 27th, he drove from his home in Mesa to Phoenix, parking about a block away from the Paramount Theater in Phoenix. Then he took to walking the streets, prowling after several women he had been watching for weeks.
Oh, so he's like a weird stalker now, too.
He's a horrible human being. He's going to stay a horrible human being.
I'm sure he is.
22-year-old Barbara Sue McDaniel left work at the First National Bank. She walked to the western parking lot and got in her car. Barbara pumped the gas pedal and tried the ignition, but it wouldn't turn over. So she repeated the process until she smelled gas, realizing she flooded her carburetor. And Barbara knew, she said that she talked to her dad and she could hear his voice being like, now you have to wait.
Right.
You just flooded it and you have to wait for the gas to dissipate before trying again. As she waited, Ernesto knocked on the window and asked for the time. Barbara said that she wasn't sure, but she thought it was around 8:45 p.m. In response, Ernesto forced himself in the car and managed to get the engine started. He drove to an empty parking lot. There, he grabbed her breasts. She tried to talk him to get out of the situation and told her that the cops were always in the area. For that, Ernesto brought out a knife and told her to give her all his money, and then took her coat and used it to wipe his fingerprints off the car and steering wheel.
Oh my God.
When he was done, he warned her not to try and fight, or next time she could get killed.
Whoa.
Barbara locked the door, started a car, and tore off towards her friends. She went to Marianne and Tempe. After calming down, they called the police together at the behest. Mary's like, we're calling.
Right.
And they were told that the police there wouldn't take the report. They needed to call the police in Phoenix.
Oh my God.
Oh, no.
Oh my God.
So when she calmed down, she returned home and again called the police. And Officer Tom Ezel took the report and filed it under armed robbery.
Hardly.
I know. The next day, Detective Robert Cornegay was assigned to the case officially, and he went to the scene of the crime and noted the skid marks and thrown gravel that kind of corroborated her story, but there's no other physical evidence. And while Cornegay was out on the beat, Detective Larry DeBus was looking through her file as well, and he requested her to come in for a follow-up interview in which she gave the same information, and she identified her attacker as a Mexican male with a 4 to 5 day old beard who reeked of cigarettes, stating she would both recognize and testify against him if they found him.
All right.
She's like, fuck this guy.
I know. Good for her. I like the amount of trauma that I've just been thinking is like piling up on this poor woman. Like, one, she calls the police. They say, hang up, call someone else. Like, now you've
Call a
got,
different police department.
Yeah.
We don't want to hear it.
just right there alone could probably deter a lot of women from calling anyone ever about this scenario.
Yeah.
And then they ask her to come in again to explain what happened. Like, I don't know. There's just a lot of like,
Just wait, it's going to get worse.
oh God.
Not for her specifically, but
Right.
so Larry continued to work the case and realized that there were 9 unsolved sexual assault reports in the area, and he created a flyer with the suspect's description and put it in the police department's newsletter on November 29th, 1962. But still, the case eventually ran cold because that's really all they had at the time. On February 2nd, 1963, Ernesto took another trip to Phoenix, again parking near the Paramount Theater. At about 8:30 p.m., he watched 18-year-old Sylvia McLeod Felt walking to her car after work as a telephone operator. As she walked to her car, she watched as a man got kind of close to her, but he got in the car next to her, and so she got into her own and felt okay. But I guess before she could even start the car, a man opened her driver's side door. God damn it, lock your doors.
Oh my God. I mean, it wasn't as easy then. Although it
was a button.
Never mind. No, just kidding. I thought
it was a button.
Yeah, I know. I'm kidding. I'm joking. I was just pretending.
You lost your brain for a second.
I
You
did.
forgot what old cars look like.
I thought at first he got into the passenger door, and I was like, so it wasn't as easy. You would have had to bend over and manually lock it yourself. But it also wouldn't have been unlocked to begin with if it so forget that.
I can't. I'm leaving it in.
That's fine. Everyone can go along for that ride with me there.
Ernesto brandished a knife, and she noticed that he had a tattoo of the initials E.M. in the web of his hand. He told her to give him her money, but she said she didn't have any. So then he said he was going to steal the car and attempted to push her sort of into the middle of the car, but it was a standard transmission and the gear shift was too long, so her body couldn't be forced over it. She screamed, and another car just happened to start driving towards them, so Ernesto took off. Sylvia slammed her door shut and locked it, then took off to the nearest gas station, telling the attendant someone tried to steal her car, and together the two called the police, and Officer W.O. Simmons responded. He got the information as well as the suspect description and put out a bolo. Records and Information Bureau officer Joe Garcia came in and dusted her car and picked up latent fingerprints.
Oh, he didn't have time to wipe them off with her
No,
own
he ran
coat.
away. On March 2nd, 1963, an 18-year-old Margaret Fair, or Maggie, in Phoenix, Arizona, finished a shift at a movie theater.
The Paramount.
She had taken a bus close to her house and was walking the rest of the way. Ernesto was driving around in his girlfriend's white over gray Packard. Just after 8 p.m., he bought a 6-pack of beer and drove into Phoenix. It was almost midnight when Ernesto came up to her, grabbed her, and dragged her into his car.
Oh my gosh.
He put a knife to her throat to get her to comply, and he had been watching her. Obviously, he had parked at the Paramount several times and knew the bus route as well. He threw her into the back seat, hog-tied her, and then took off. 20 minutes later, he stopped in, the country area. Ernesto took her belongings, raped her, and then drove her back to where he abducted her when it was over. When he left, she ran home and told her older sister, Sue Williamson, and the two immediately sought help by calling the police. Before detectives arrived, Maggie was told not to bathe or comb her hair, and so she didn't. Detective Young and Smith were sent to Maggie's to get the report, where she recounted the entire event as detectives wrote down the information. Afterwards, they collected her undergarments and bagged them as evidence. As Maggie was changing, detectives called in the information about the car, and Maggie then was told to go to the Good Samaritan Hospital and get a rape examination kit completed.
Again, just layers of trauma.
At this point, no bruises or ligature marks were noted, according to Dr. Lakos. We don't like this guy.
I can already tell you. I would record a bruise if I was.
Yeah.
I probably shouldn't say that.
Don't do someday. Okay, so here I need to tell you that I do not appreciate the detective. So let's talk about this for a minute. Okay. Maggie gives her first report of what happened almost immediately, in which, like I said, they annotated no bruises or ligature marks. Then she's told to go to the hospital and gives a second account, and then a third to Detective Kyle Gordo and Don Davis when they get assigned the case and given the information from the first detective who interviewed her. In the rape case, the doctor annotated that Maggie wasn't a virgin, though she claimed to be. And nowadays, we know, or should know, that even doing things such as using a tampon can break the fucking hymen. So,
right.
We don't know.
And who cares?
Yeah. So again, it doesn't mean she's not a virgin, okay? But they decided collectively that she wasn't, and she was lying. They also report that the statement had plenty of holes in it, and I bet it does. We've talked about this before, but the mind can block things out to protect itself, so that's just sort of a bullshit thing to say. Then a drunk man comes in matching the description that Maggie gave, and she is brought into the police station for a lineup, and she looks at all the people, including this drunk man named Billie Jean Morrison. Maggie dutifully goes to the lineup, and as expected, she says that the guy that did it isn't there.
Right.
And they're like, oh, well, we had this dude that looked just like him and got arrested. And so now they're like, oh, well, clearly she's lying. So what do Detectives Gordo and Davis do? Interview Maggie for a fourth fucking time.
Oh my God.
They insinuate to her that she is lying and ask her to take a polygraph.
Are you serious?
Like, how fucking insulting is that?
It's these stories that I feel like men who don't get it, like when there's the discussion of, oh, women just claim rape, whatever. I feel like those people need to be sat in a room and listen to these stories repeatedly. Because this is what would make someone not want to go to the police.
Oh, and she goes through it. We're going to talk about it. And I think I'd probably talk about it later. I mean, they do find semen in the vaginal vault. They don't find a whole lot of the marks and stuff. She claims to be hog-tied, and they don't find marks. And at one point, her older sister's like, that's probably my fault because I told her, if you ever get in a weird situation, don't fight back because you're more likely to get killed if you do. And so poor little Maggie is just kind of
like laid there.
was compliant because she doesn't want to she keeps telling herself, I don't want to die.
Mm-hmm.
And so she's listening to her older sister. And we find out later that Maggie's on the lower end of, like, she's not mentally disabled, but she is on the
Mm-hmm.
lower level of IQ. She's super shy. Like, she has a hard time talking with people. And now we're just interviewing her and telling her everybody that she's lying. And like the whole time, I guess she's like sitting and shaking and like doesn't want to look at people. And I'm like, yeah, of course not. She just went through a giant trauma. She doesn't talk to people to
Right.
begin with. And you guys are telling her she's lying. Like, what
Right.
absolute pieces of shit.
Which is proven that people who are more vulnerable, like, are, and who have potentially some form of, like, social deficit, I'm going to say that for lack of better words, like, are going to attempt to answer people the way they think they should be answered. Like, not really like the genuine, like, no, I'm convicted here that I know what happened. You're wrong, you stupid police officer. You're more inclined to go, oh, he clearly didn't like that answer that I just gave him. What is he looking for?
Well, she doesn't quite do that. She sticks with her guns and
Okay.
she is like, I'm not lying, but you can tell it takes a toll on her.
Oh, I can't even imagine. It's so sad.
Okay, so
Also, I was thinking, in addition to traumas, like, just the idea, and I know that they have to collect evidence and there's a certain way to do this, but the idea that they tell her to, like, go home and not shower, and then we're gonna come to your house, we're gonna brush your hair and, get your, like, collect that evidence, take your underwear. Now, still don't shower and go to the hospital. Like, I don't know. That's just
yeah.
feels like
Well, she was
it's,
already home when they called the police and they said, just don't
oh, just
shower
stay there and don't shower.
because
Yeah.
we need the forensic evidence.
It would be like the
And
first thing I'd want to do after I
that is,
had called the police.
I know. I know.
Like,
But she listened and she
yeah,
waited and poor
yeah.
thing. Okay. And finally, Monday on March 4th, Detective Carol Cooley gets assigned the case. He too went to Maggie's house to fucking interview her.
Oh my God.
She was at work. When he arrived, Cooley spoke instead with Maggie's sister, who informed him that since the attack, their brother-in-law, Paul Hinkle, walks her home every night. When asked about the fact that there were no marks on Maggie, again, her older sister, said that was her fault. She had taught Maggie, if she were ever in a precarious situation, it's better not to resist, because you're more likely to get killed. Sue also told Cooley that she had been through enough, that the previous detectives insinuated she was lying and not a virgin, and Cooley replied that they could have been mistaken and gave her his card, but he wasn't really much better, so don't get excited.
Right.
Next, he went to Maggie's work, but she wouldn't talk to him there. Instead, the two arranged to speak the next day, and Cooley brought her into the station the next day, so now we're continuing to traumatize Maggie.
It says, like, attempt 5, 6? Yeah.
Fifth interview.
Yeah.
Cooley again asked if she was mistaken before having her go through the event again. In which down he wrote everything down and then afterwards brought in books of known rapists for her to go over.
What?
Nothing. He wasn't there. She said none of them were the man. After 2 hours, he finally took her home. And at this point, I'm surprised she continued to cooperate with police.
Oh, I mean, yeah.
I'm fucking losing it.
Ernesto, is that his official first name?
Miranda?
Yeah, Miranda.
Mm-hmm.
Could so easily, like, if he had a good defense attorney, they could use the fact that she flipped through books of faces for, like, hours on end, as, like, his defense.
So while police were doing nothing, essentially, Ernesto was left to believe he had gotten away with rape and was back on the prowl.
Yeah.
On March 7th, Detective Cooley went to Sergeant Moore and asked if he could administer the polygraph to Maggie. Because why not? Yeah. So they picked up the reluctant girl who literally, like if you read about this, was like crying to her sister and was like, I don't want to do this. This is ridiculous. And Sue was like, listen, like we have to get through this so that we can prove that you are telling the truth. Like we need you to just,
This is so sickening to me.
So they picked up this reluctant girl, who again only went because her sister told her. Like, we have to prove that we were telling the truth. After it was done, Moore stated that her results were inconsistent.
Oh, shut up.
Stating she was considered mentally slow, that she was too shy, and that she had taken medication for cramps and thought it affected the polygraph.
What year was this?
This was back in the day. What did I just say? 1963? Yeah.
Oh, it's so like riddled with misogyny, this story so far. Like, oh, she was taking medication for cramps. Like,
yeah. It was probably ibuprofen.
right.
You know what I mean? Like
Tylenol, like that's absolutely insane.
When the police dropped her off at home, they suggested to older sister Sue that Maggie come back in a week for a follow-up test to see if they could get better results.
Shut up.
Sue finally started to have enough and realized the police were just putting Maggie through the ringer and escorted the police out and basically slammed the door.
Yeah.
I was like,
we're done.
Fuck yourself.
Yeah. Don't catch the guy.
Yeah. Then Cooley and Moore went to Paramount Theater to speak with Reginald Bertig. Cooley said that he wanted to talk to him about his relationship with Maggie.
Oh, God.
Reginald was like, we're bus buddies.
Yeah.
Like, we ride to and from work together. But that's as far as it goes. Just like, are you kidding me right now? Because they basically wanted to insinuate that she was sleeping with him, is what they were trying to do.
Right.
After speaking with Reginald, Detective Cooley finally went back to the office and began searching for similar reports in the area of Maggie's attack. Like, we didn't do this to begin with. We waited until we destroyed this poor girl's mental state.
Right.
And now we're actually going to see if there's anything that corroborates it. But he didn't find anything in the immediate area and began expanding his search, finally coming up with 2 reports near the Paramount Theater, one of the attack on Barbara and one on Sylvia.
Probably wouldn't have been that hard to find that initially.
Well, they also, so if you, in the beginning when I said that they did the one and they labeled it under armed robbery.
Right.
And they labeled the other one under, I think, grand theft is what they originally labeled it under. So yes, he was going to attack them. Like he very much probably would have raped them if he could have.
For sure.
But he was working himself up to it.
Yeah.
But because it originally got labeled as something else, I think it was harder to find.
Right.
Because I don't know. That's how they labeled it.
Yeah. I also envision like a room of metal file cabinets. And you have to go through the sexual assaults, and then you have to cross match it to the location, and it's not as simple as a
not as simple as computers. Yeah. So Paul, remember the cousin, continued to wait for Maggie after work one night. And so Paul was, I don't know if I told you, he was had been in the military and had recently gotten out and was there in town before he was looking for a job. And so while he wasn't working, he's like, I'll just pick up Maggie, make sure she's safe. So
and be prepared to kick some ass if I need
essentially.
to. Yeah.
One night while he was waiting, he watched a lone car drive slowly in the area. Paul noted the license plate and watched it park just down the road. Minutes later, as Maggie and Reginald stepped off the bus, Paul met them and told Maggie about the car. And so the two started walking towards it. Paul was like, I need you. This vehicle's fucking weird, and I need you to see if this is the car, because this is just off-putting. Because I guess he the car didn't drive by just once, but I think it was 2 or 3 times, and it was creeping. And Paul's like, what the fuck is this?
Right.
You know what I mean? Obviously.
It's almost too obvious.
Yeah.
That this, we gotta, what is this? Yeah.
So as they got close, the driver, who just has been sitting in the driver's seat, started the ignition and literally slammed on the gas to get away.
Oh.
Not suspicious at all. So Paul called in the license plate to the police, reaching Officer Dave Anderson, telling them that Detective Cooley had given them a card and asked them to call if he saw anything suspicious. So I think he got a partial license plate. He knew that the letters in the beginning were a certain letter combination, but he didn't know all of the numbers, but he also knew the description
of the car, right?
Yeah. So Officer Anderson ran down the plate with the DMV and found that the car was a 1958 Oldsmobile sedan. Paul said that the car was not an Oldsmobile that he was looking at, but a Packard, and that Maggie said it looked like the car that she had encountered before. On Monday, Detective Cooley interviewed Paul, who stated he may have been off on the license plate because of the lighting affecting his ability to see, but he knew the first 3 letters were for sure DFL. Paul was also sure it was a Packard Patrician due to the oblong tail lights that ran along the quarter panel. Like one of his friends, I guess, had the same car, and he's like, no, I know this car.
Right.
I know what it is. It's not an Oldsmobile. It's a Packard. He told the detectives Maggie was shy and May considered to be slow. Even though they were cousins, she hardly even spoke to him. I know. Like, she's like, couldn't talk to dudes.
I love that, though.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that he, like,
stood up
he
for
just was there for her.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, not just like, I'll just pick her up. He was watching.
Yeah, clearly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Armed with that, Detective Cooley had the DMV run the license plates that started with DFL and were registered to a Packard. The results came in, and one car came back with a partial license plate on a Packard, license plate DFL 317, to a 1953 four-door. The car was registered to Twyla Hoffman, who lived with boyfriend 23-year-old Ernesto Miranda in Mesa, Arizona.
Oh my God, he's only 23 at this time?
Yeah.
I'm like envisioning his life of crime. He's now in his 40s.
I know. That's why I added how old he was. Police sought out to speak with him, noting that he matched the description of the attacker that Maggie had provided.
Huh?
When speaking with neighbors, that's how they got the description. While they were tracking him down, the police looked up Ernesto in the system, and on March 13th, detective found his extensive arrest record and realized he might actually be a person of interest.
Good God.
When they got to his house, they found the Packard outside, and glancing in the backseat, police found it to be the same description Maggie had given to them. So she had told them, like, when she was shoved into the backseat, there was like this like paintbrush that she saw, rope, and there was like, it wasn't just the rope that she was used to like bind her, but there was like a rope like set up in the car for something, and I couldn't figure out what it was for, but she said that it was like legit tied up. Like there.
Tying the back door shut, maybe, or something.
No, wasn't anything like that. But I guess they like looked in the back, and it was identical to what she was saying. Because remember, she's face down, so she's looking at this paintbrush. She's looking at certain features the whole time. And I hope that they got that oh shit moment. Like we fucked up with how we treated her. Like we fucked this up. Yeah. I hope that even right in the face.
I mean, I hope that that's the moment they got, but even then, I hope, like, maybe they got the, like, oh my God, we just wasted so much of our own money.
Yeah.
Like,
idiots.
Yeah. They probably didn't.
No, definitely not. They were too arrogant.
Yeah.
You know that. Ernesto willingly went to the police station to talk with them. And during the interview, Ernesto stated that it wasn't him. Couldn't have been, because he was working that night. After a half an hour, the interview was complete, and the police asked if he would be willing to be part of a lineup. Ernesto agreed, stating that it would clear everything up. So he got to pick his number for the lineup, and he chose number 1. The police called 3 women, but only Maggie and Barbara were able to be reached at the time. Sylvia wasn't. Both women came in, and first Maggie and then Barbara. Both women believed number 1 to be the man, but neither would say that they were like 100% positive.
Sure. Yeah.
Maggie did say that if she heard him speak, she'd be able to say for sure it was him. Okay, it's going to get worse. You ready? After the identification, both women agreed to stay in the station while Ernesto was re-interviewed in case they were needed. Though the 2 women didn't positively identify him, the police insinuated to Ernesto that he had been picked out. Back in the interrogation room, Ernesto simply said that he better tell police what happened, and he immediately began to corroborate statements that the women had given. After giving an oral statement, the detectives asked him to write everything out. After making the statements, the detectives asked Maggie to come into the interrogation room where Ernesto was sitting.
No.
Let's go face your attacker.
What?
In a room. Unchained. He's just sitting in there.
Oh, I have full body goosebumps right now from that information.
Can you imagine just walking in and seeing your rapist sitting like 2 feet from you, not shackled, not like he's just sitting there. Because he's willingly at the station at this time. He's not under arrest at this time.
You've been repeatedly told you're a liar. And now you're going to walk into a room with all men and your rapist.
And they want you to point him out.
No. No, 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 no. No, it's so bad.
She did. She went in. She's a tough girl.
Holy shit.
I'd have came
She's
across that
so
table. Start throwing hands at everybody.
I honestly don't even know what I would do.
I'd throw hands. Horrified, Maggie had to listen as detectives asked the man to state his name, to which he replied, Ernesto Miranda.
Ugh.
She then positively identified him.
Yeah.
She knew that fucking voice.
Yeah.
Then they had Barbara enter the room.
God, did they not have a room with the reverse mirrors or anything like that? They can't just have these girls go stand behind the wall?
And again had him say his name. Asking if Ernesto recognized the woman, he gave a confession that he was going to rape her. She talked him out of it.
Oh my God.
While she's standing there.
Oh my God. The police are just as bad as this Ernesto right now.
They are. With that, Ernesto was immediately arrested for kidnapping, rape, and robbery of Maggie, the robbery of Barbara, and failure to register with the sheriff's office as an ex-convict. I wish I could tell you that's the end of the story, but it's not.
It's not. You know, he goes to prison for like, not even. Okay.
On March 15th, Detective Cooley obtained a right to search consent form that Ernesto signed, giving police the right to search his home and any vehicles on his property. After more evidence was collected, the case was sent to prosecution to present for indictment. Ernesto was given a court-appointed lawyer, Alvin Moore, and the pair decided on insanity plea. It's always insanity, man.
Oh, man.
Both psychiatrists from the defense and prosecution examined Ernest. Defense psychiatry reported that he had, quote, a full elementary education and that although he had an emotional illness, he had sufficient mentality and emotional stability to understand what he was doing when he was doing it and to fully appreciate the potential consequences of his act, end quote.
For sure.
And that's the defense. That's not the prosecution. The defense is like, oh, no,
right.
No.
And that's a bad lawyer.
Yeah. Well, after that, the reports came out, Alvin was forced to vacate the insanity plea.
Yeah. Okay.
So they couldn't plea to it. As a result, they did go to trial. The first trial to get its date was the one for Barbara, actually, and was held on June 18th, 1963, presided over by Judge Yale McFate. At trial, Barbara identified Ernesto as her attacker and was practically an open and shut case. The court, of course, found him guilty.
Mm-hmm.
The second trial followed pretty much immediately and was presided over by the same judge. The prosecution went step by step of what happened that night, the attack that was inflicted on Maggie, with Maggie herself taking the stand and detailing her account. Then prosecution brought forth the confession of Ernesto, forensic evidence, forensic specialists, psychologists, legal scholars, and timelines which left no room for reasonable doubt. During cross-examination, Moore asked Detective Cooley how he went about getting Ernesto's confession. When the detective answered, Moore asked if he had been warned of his rights. Cooley said at the statement, like when the paragraph was typed out and read aloud, that he did, but they didn't have him sign anything to the effect. But Moore asked if he was told about having an attorney present, and Cooley said no, it was not advised, and it wasn't police practice at the time, which it wasn't. It wasn't like their standard.
Right.
So he's like, no, I didn't. That's not what we do.
Yeah.
Even at the rebuttal jury, or even with that rebuttal, a jury found Ernesto guilty for kidnapping, rape, and robbery of Maggie. And on June 27, 1963, Judge McFate sentenced Ernesto on both cases. He received 2 concurrent terms of 20 to 30 years in prison.
Wow.
Alvin Moore is not a bad defense lawyer.
Yeah, I already realized after I had said that, because of the psychiatrist, I started to think, oh no, this guy should go down in infamy.
So Moore immediately filed an appeal on the grounds that Detective Cooley obtained a written confession illegally by denying him his constitutional right to legal counsel. This is where the Miranda versus Arizona Supreme Court case of 1966 comes in.
Holy cow.
First, to get into it, on April 22nd, 1965, the Arizona Supreme Court ruled that the Ernesto Miranda conviction for the Margaret Fair case would be upheld for two reasons. First, there was no legal requirement for Ernest to be advised of his rights, and second, he hadn't asked for an attorney at the time of questioning. The judge therefore ruled it would have to be appealed at the next level. But at this time, Alvin Moore's health was failing. He was like in his 80s or 90s.
Oh, wow.
Like he was an older man. So he got in touch with John Flynn and was asked to take over, along with another attorney, Peter Baird. Flynn argued that he couldn't have his confession made admissible based on his Fifth Amendment rights being violated.
Oh.
Again, he was not given the opportunity to address it with legal counsel. He may not have understood the consequences of giving up such information. Chief Justice Earl Warren, Justice Hugo Black, Justice William O. Douglas, Justice Tom C. Clark, Justice John M. Harlan II, Justice William J. Brennan Jr., Justice Potter Stewart, Justice Byron White, and Justice Arthur J. Goldberg were the ones that oversaw the case on February 28, 1966, in which the Supreme Court ruled in a 5-4 decision in favor of Ernesto Miranda.
That's so, like, this is such a unique juxtaposed, like, position I feel right now.
On June 13th of 1966. So Justice Warren was like the Chief Justice and spoke in regards to this and said, he spoke on the need to protect individuals from self-incrimination during police interrogations. The court ruled Ernesto's confession inadmissible due to the law enforcement failure to inform him of his rights, specifically stating, quote, without proper safeguards, the process of in-custody interrogation of persons suspected or accused of crime contains inherently compelling pressures which work to undermine the individual's will to resist and to compel him to speak where he would otherwise do so freely. Therefore, a defendant must be warned prior to any questioning that he has the right to remain silent, that anything he says can be used against him in the court of law, that he has the right to the presence of an attorney, and that if he cannot afford an attorney, one will be appointed for him prior to any questioning if he so desires, end quote.
That's, like, amazing. I hate that they gave it his last name.
Well, they always do it, and it's like cases between people.
I know.
After which the reading of the Miranda rights, initially known as the Miranda Warning, to suspects was established. Again, they are, you have the right to marry. I mean, oh my goodness. I can't even say it. I'm so mad. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can be used against you in the court of law. You have the right to the presence of an attorney to assist you prior to questioning and to be with you during questioning if you so desire. If you cannot afford an attorney, you have the right to have an attorney appointed for you prior to questioning. And then they added, do you understand these rights and will you voluntarily answer my questions?
Yeah. I hear those all the time on my little YouTube videos. Although I feel like I hear them say anything you say can and will be held against you in the court of law. I feel like I have heard them say that a lot.
Mm-hmm. I feel like that's the TV version, but maybe they have changed the wording slightly. But technically, this is the official Miranda warning. And with that, Ernest Miranda's sentence was vacated for Margaret Fair.
Right. That's why this sucks.
Mm-hmm. However, Barbara's case was not included in the appeal and as such was not affected by the Supreme Court decision.
God.
While in prison in 1966, Ernest attempted to sue Twyla for custody of their daughter.
What?
She went to see him in jail and he stated the only way to get out of the trial was for Maggie to marry him so that she couldn't testify. That he wanted his daughter so the three of them could be a family, which of course
did not happen.
Well, it pissed off Twyla, and that is not something like a woman's scorn, man.
No.
That's not how you're gonna win something. So detectives came and talked to her. And when she spoke with detectives about their conversation, she told them that he admitted to the rape to her and was willing to
Way
testify.
to go, Twyla. Way to go.
On October 1966, a trial date was set for the second go at Maggie Fair's case. However, prosecution requested a delay until February 17th, 1967, because Maggie was married and pregnant and didn't want to go through it
again.
while she was pregnant.
Great.
They did delay it until after she gave birth. This time, the trial lasted a whole 7 days. Again, he was found guilty with the help of Twyla for a second time.
Oh, that's okay. I always knew Twyla had a good head on her shoulders.
In 1967, he was sentenced again. At the beginning of 1976, however, Ernesto was still released from prison.
What?
I know he got out.
For good behavior?
Probably. They didn't say why, but I bet it was good behavior.
That was so early.
I know.
He was sentenced
to like 20 to 30 years.
20 to 30 years. Twice at one point.
No. I know. On January 31st, 1976, he went to a bar at about 1 p.m.
Oh, shut up.
No, I will not shut up, actually.
Oh, you cannot be serious. This guy.
There he played cards and drank with 2 younger men. At the time, as the time ticked on, the alcohol kicked in and the younger men were frustrated they were losing at cards. They accused him of cheating. In return, Ernesto punched both men, but the bartender was quick to stop the fight, and so Ernesto went to the bathroom to clean his hands. I guess he, like, put them both down.
Yeah.
Returning to find the men standing again. This time they were ready to fight back, and during the ensuing fight, one man produced a knife. Ernesto saw it and attempted to gain control, but the men he was fighting were 10 years his junior, and the knife went into the left side of his rib cage, nicking his heart before the man ripped it back out of Ernesto's chest.
Thank God.
Ernesto was rushed to Good Samaritan, where he was pronounced dead at 7:03 p.m.
Oh, I was like waiting for him to go back out there and start stalking ladies at the Paramount again or something.
I know. And with that, the Miranda warning was established and Ernesto was ended.
There we go. The vigilantes that we probably shouldn't highlight too much these days right now, but that guy.
Yeah. So I knew I was like not gonna tell you.
I know. I was like really like I like leaned back in my seat, like, okay, here we go again. And then more women get to be traumatized based on this loser.
I know.
Oh my God. What card game was he playing? Do you know?
I do not. And I guess so they had to call his brother because he was living with his brother at the time and let him know. And then I think it was his other brother was at his wedding and they had to call his other brother and be like, hey,
oh my gosh,
our brother was killed today in a bar fight.
I think at that point, I mean, who knows, but at that point you'd almost be like, it's your wedding day and your brother's probably put you through a lot of turmoil.
We'll wait.
Yeah, you'd probably be like, okay, that's great.
Yeah.
That's my wedding gift at this point. Like, I don't have to think about this guy anymore. Like, my God.
Yeah. I don't know, but that was it. So, yeah, I always heard about, the Miranda case and the Miranda rights and everything about it. And I had always thought that after the case that he was just let go, like he was just let out of prison. I was like, are you kidding me? And nobody ever talks about, because a lot of times I feel like when it's portrayed, it's that this man just got railroaded and, it went to court. And that's why we have this case is because it always, whenever I read it, it was portrayed as he was like this innocent man that just got hammered by the justice system. And that's why, we have these Miranda rights and the warnings. It turns out he's a fucking monster.
I actually, like, honestly, always assumed that's like sort of why my mind was, I started to think a lot about what we were discussing there for a second, like internally. Like, I always assumed he was an innocent man. And it was when you start to now tell me that we're going to the Supreme Court after having heard what he'd just done, that I start to think, wait a second, this guy is going to get released because we have this law now that the Supreme Court enacted, put into place. So he clearly wins. Holy shit.
Turns out he was a monster.
Oh man. I wish, I understand why they don't. It's the case in which that they name these laws after, but there's a part of me that I'm like, man, they should have named that like the Maggie law, or give her like some infamism for the trauma she went through, but nope. Now Ernesto the rapist gets to live in infamy.
Yeah. So that is the case of the Miranda warnings.
There you go.
All right. Well, to all those out there listening, be careful. It's a dangerous world we live in.